Hi everyone, I'm Laura and you're watching The Tempted Baker. Today we're going to be making a vanilla cake from scratch. Cake from scratch can be a little intimidating. There's more ingredients, the steps are a little bit more precise, and the overall flavor is well worth it. So, sure, a box mix is hard to screw up, but you can't beat the flavor of a homemade vanilla cake. The first ingredient we're going to talk about is flour. If you want this light, airy texture, you need to be using a flour that doesn't produce as much gluten. So that's our goal. Our goal is less gluten. And all-purpose flour is much different than cake flour. This recipe is going to use cake flour. So I have some here. Looks the same, right? Looks like flour. The difference is this flour has less protein in it. So when we're creaming our product together, we're not going to activate as much of the gluten in the flour, and that's going to be essential to this texture of cake. You can use all-purpose flour, but be prepared for it to have the texture of like a cornbread. So with that being said, invest in some cake flour. It is more expensive. It comes in smaller containers, but it's well worth it when it's all said and done. From the flour, we're going to move on to eggs. But these eggs need to be at room temperature, and that's important because they will incorporate into your batter a lot sooner than a cold egg will. We're going to have oil and butter. Our last wet ingredient for this recipe is whole milk. I like to put a little bit of vinegar in my whole milk to add like a tangy note to it, but whole milk will be sufficient as well. And that whole milk, guess what? Is at room temperature. So you need to make sure that all these things are at room temperature, and that's now our butter, our milk, and our eggs all need to be at room temperature. All right, we're ready to get started. I have my mixer with the paddle attachment, have all my ingredients ready. My eggs are at room temperature, floating in the 6 ounces of milk. I also have my other milk, 4 ounces, in the oil at room temperature as well. We have the oven already set at 335, ready to go. Our baking pans are ready to go as well. So what we're going to do first is we're going to add in all the dry ingredients. So that cake flour first, this is 13 ounces. And by the way, this recipe is from the Sugar Geek. She's amazing. Her name is Liz. Check out her information, and I think I have her profile on my favorite channels on my YouTube channel. Alright, so we put those 13 ounces of flour in. We've also got 13 ounces of sugar that's going to go in there. Both baking powder and baking soda. Our salt. Okay. We're going to give that, lock it in place, give it a nice little mix just for a couple seconds to incorporate all those dry ingredients. And then we're going to slowly add in our butter. When we're done with this step, we want it to look kind of like sand on the beach with a little bit larger pieces, but just basically sandy, okay? Your texture is going to be sandy. And this butter is at what? Room temperature. So I'm going to lower this and put it on low speed and just slowly incorporate that butter. A total of 8 ounces of butter, or 2 sticks. Not too big pieces, just kind of enough to make it count, but. And right now we're coating our flour with that butter. Sometimes when I'm in a hurry, I will put the butter in the microwave under the softened butter category. It doesn't do more than mine, doesn't do more than 2 sticks at a time, and I usually have to run it twice, but it's a good way to get your butter at room temperature quickly if you couldn't let it sit out on the counter. All right, my butter is in. step is to scrape down the sides of the bowl again, a very important step, of course, because it will help us incorporate any of those pieces of flour or butter or any of the above that didn't get mixed properly in the beginning. And then they'll have a chance to get mixed in later. Okay. Our next step is to lightly mix this egg and milk mixture. So this was 6 ounces of milk and our 3 eggs, both at room temperature. So we just want them slightly mixed together. And then we're going to slowly add this into our batter. Before we just kind of, with the oil and the milk, we put it in all at once. But this step is going to be at a slower rate. That way everything gets emulsified properly together. And then we'll be stopping to scrape the sides of the bowl as well, about halfway through. So slowly add in the egg and milk mixture on low. And if you're a new baker, one of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm waiting until I don't see much of my liquid freestanding in the bowl or on top of the batter. So as soon as a lot of that liquid gets incorporated, just right as soon as it gets incorporated, then I add my next little part in. Okay, and then I'm going to put my vanilla in. Like I said, you could have definitely added that to the milk mixture. And that's about a tablespoon. I usually put a little bit more in. All right, our finished product. What do you think? You did a great job. Now you're gonna put those in the oven for about 30 minutes, but since my oven is possessed by Satan, I have to watch a little bit closely. So if you have a finicky oven like that, also keep your eye on it. A lot of people will use a toothpick inserted, and if it comes out clean, your cake is ready. That's a great method, but I also want to make sure I don't over bake it, and it's going to sit for another 10 minutes in the pan on a wire rack. So keep that in mind as well. And then after that 10-minute time of sitting out on the wire rack, I'll wrap them up really good with saran wrap and stick them in the refrigerator until I'm ready to use them. Putting your cakes in the refrigerator shortly after they come out of the oven helps those butters and oils really condense and kind of settle back into your cake. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe down below and hit that notification bell so I can let you know when my next cake comes out. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you had a good cake baking experience.